pretty scary. She's pretty scary.
OSHA bites. And you meant to back on. What?
I'm pretty sure you're back.
What? I was gonna feel like that. I got it. Thank you. Wait, was you sitting here? I was. Want me to move?
Hi, Yossi.
Is Yossi here?
Okay, if you're sitting in the back, standing in the back, do not be in the back. Yes?
Is it okay if I sit here?
Okay, we're going to go ahead and start. We're going to start. Dahlia and our last panelists are on their way. Before we start, we would like to thank the co-sponsors of this club hour, which is COA and Hillel for ordering the food for us. They're very helpful. And I shall say a few words about the ZOA trip. Are you videoing me?
Yes.
Oh, okay. So the ZOA runs this amazing trip. Amazing because I've been on it, so I can tell you from experience. Where they take students who are pro-Israel now or want to be pro-Israel, and they take them to Israel for free. You heard me, it's actually free. Your ticket is paid up to $1,000, and the program is free, and they teach you all about Israel, the politics, and take you all over. And it's so much fun, and it's free, and you should all apply on the ZOA campus website. And if you need a recommendation, I will get you on the trip. Also, like, it's free. Did I mention our free trip to Israel? It's like worth like plus.
And the application is currently rolling. There are 35 spots. We've accepted 2 or 3 people so far. So if you want to go, put in your application.
You should go, and you should go, and you should go, and you should go, and you should go. Okay, Handel.
The dates are June 25th.
If I could kill someone with my mind, you would be dead.
What?
If I could kill someone with my mind, you would be dead.
I want to first of all thank you all for coming. I think this is going to be a really interesting and enriching panel. So we have like current and former IDF soldiers here. One of them is on his way. He's going to be here like 2 minutes, but I think we can already start. So I'm going to go ahead and ask everyone, starting from that side, to just say their name, introduce themselves.
And your relationship status.
Okay. Which unit you just brief, like 1 minute description.
My name is Israel Viton. I was in the Army now 16 years ago. So this was at the time of the Second Intifada, 2002. Then on him.
Just the Irish.
And for the last 15 years, I'm a marketing professional, marketing consultant. So I work with brands, all kinds of products and services. But I also do my own research, my own studies into Israeli history, Palestinian history, Islamic history, Judeo-Islamic history. Because what I found is that you have a lot of misconceptions, a lot of layers of distortions, and my goal in my pursuit is to clarify some
things. Ralph Viton also. Okay, so 23. I went to Hunter College 3 years ago. And then after the war in Satan, I decided to put my application on hold and go draft. I didn't realize that, training didn't give you a gun, you go to war, so I was part of that. I've been in the Army for 2 years and 7 months now. I'm still in the Army. It's my last month. I go back to Israel in 2 weeks, and 4 or 5 weeks, and then get out. And also Gibati, we specialize in tunnel warfare and anti-terror. We've been in the Navy now for the last 6 months. We just finished our period there.
Actually, last week.
Yeah.
I was a park trooper, you all know me, right? Gil?
Hey, Gil.
Hi, Gil.
Gil's not single, by the way.
What?
I mean...
I'm your girlfriend right now.
She'll be messing with us, doesn't matter.
Facebook Live.
It's up there forever.
I was a park trooper from 2009 to 2012, and then a little bit after 2012 because we had Modanam, which was an operation in Gaza.
translate it into a pillar of fire.
It's pillar of defense. In English, it's pillar of defense. Just so you know.
Hello everyone, my name is Michal, from Jerusalem originally. Moved here maybe 2 years ago. I was in the Air Force, Israeli Air Force, served for 3 years. My first 2 years I was a fitness instructor. Then I decided to go to officer school. Was trained there for almost 4 months, I think. And then I was stationed in Wing 15, that's an Israeli Air Force base. And I was serving as fitness officer and other duties of that we could do. And before I went to officer school, I was in the Air Force Academy Flight base, where I got to train future air pilots, Israeli pilots. So in their training course, I was there training in boot camp. Yeah, so I finished 2 years ago.
From Brooklyn, New York. I was in the Convent Engineers, and I served from 2012 till 2014. And
What unit you were in?
the Convent Engineers.
So we did get, obviously a mix of questions. Some are just very basic, some were a little bit controversial. So just to start off, use us into this. Yeah, we'll start
the question came from the people. Basically, on Tuesday, we put a table downstairs and we stopped people and we asked them to write questions for us for the panel because there's not a lot of dialogue in school about what happens in the Middle East and what happens in Israel, and there's a lot of misconceptions, like Israel said, and a lot of things that are misunderstood. So we decided we want to create more dialogue. So we asked people to write a question for us. You can come and see what they say.
We're going to try to get through most of them, which is why not every single person on the panel needs to answer each and every question. Like, you can choose which ones you want to answer. So this one, actually, I think all of you guys can answer. And I think something we were all curious about is what was really a defining moment of your service? Was there one moment that stood out to you during your entire time there? First, jump in. Well, that's Rafi because he's still in the army.
There's one defining moment. It's definitely less of the action moments where you're doing an arrest and there's interesting things happening. It's more of the little impact you have of changing people's opinions, whether that's the Palestinians that are there or the Jews. Just showing them that they're not all Jews, not Israeli soldiers in general, are not bloodthirsty.
Are you referring to because he was on the
I was
Syrian
the Syrian border as well. We helped a lot of injured Syrians get across the border for medical help and sent them packages and stuff. So for 6 months we were just doing that, and now we were 6 months in Jenin, where you also had so many opportunities to speak to the families and see little kids trying to speak a few words of Hebrew. So it was definitely a highlight.
So Jenin used to be one of the main terrorist cities back in 2002, and it's really changed, right?
There still is a lot of action. A month ago there was a huge arrest that we took part in. The Yamam, the Israeli special SWAT team, went and killed a terrorist that killed Alav Raziel Sheva. Still action.
Did you want to add something, Gil?
No, I think my defining moment, I think for the first year in the army, usually in our combat units, you have a year of training. 4 months basic training, then 4 months you really learn what you're going to do. And then 4 months you go to a line and you learn how to operate stakeouts and stuff like that. So when you go to the actual unit, I was a medic as well, and to welcome you to the unit, they wake you up like 4 in the morning, and they make you run and do a lot of stuff as a medic, and they really make you go crazy. And they made everything so real, you know, they use ketchup and stuff like that, full blood and stuff like that, and everything was very real. So I think that was defining me, like, oh wow, I'm really doing that. Because before that, everything was, you know, in the base, you know, you're just waiting for it to go out, basic training, or you're in training, but when you're in the base, and someone tell you there's someone injured in the field office, the guarding area, and you have to run there 20 seconds, because you know that in 1 minute there's no going to be a soldier there. You really understand that. Life and death situations. I think that was my defining.
There were a couple. I would say the last one that I think was very emotional to me was when my 3rd year, right before I finished my service. So in my base, we were having not only like soldiers between 18 to 22, 23, but also soldiers that are between a range of 30s to their 50s serving, and this is like sort of population in my base and many other bases inside IDF, where they get into some sort of routines, which is sometimes can be very very much alike. So you don't get much of life quality sometimes that you would want, because you serve a lot and you give a lot to the system, but sometimes you don't even have time for yourself. So one of the projects that I've led was, myself and my team, was a healthy lifestyle project in my base, where we actually took overweight people, just like the Biggest Loser concept here, and we just trained them military-ish way in trying to actually get them to lose weight and improve their lifestyle, and get them into shape, just like they were before, when they got into the military in the first place. And this defining moment where having in the Air Force, you actually have ceremony where you sum up every military period, they say, Air Force military period. So it happens every 3 months, so that you actually get to have ceremony and see all the things that the base did and improved, and what we need still to improve in the future. And so that ceremony, that was when I got a chance to actually shake the base commander hand, and got this Excel certificate of really just as a gratitude for all this project and what it did for these 15 people that really got signed into this project that lasted really half a year. And it was really, really, really exciting for me to get that, because it just goes to show that it doesn't matter your age, because back then I was 22, 24 now. I think 22 years old girl with another group of 18-year-old kids under me, and we got to do such a great change in people in their 50s or 40s. So that was something very special.
So I had a lot of defining moments in my service. It's kind of hard to pick one specifically, but if I had to pick one, it was definitely when I got the call that I'm going to Gaza. I happened to be out off the base at that moment, and I was called back early to go down to take the bus down there. And it really hit me what I was doing there, why I was there.
Gaza during the 2014 war. So before we move on, you didn't say your. I thought you said no. Go ahead.
I do have a very defining moment that stands out very clearly. It was a bright sunny day along the border of Lebanon. I was in my post on Charles Gove, and we were randomly, or I guess not randomly, but attacked by Hezbollah, and my position was attacked with anti-tank missiles. And I can tell you that, you know, nothing can really prepare you for that moment of impact. Thank God I was not hurt. I hit the ground, shrapnel fell everywhere, but I was not hurt. But I can tell you that in that moment, life really does flash before your eyes. I don't know if anyone ever experienced that, but there is a kind of instantaneous recollection of your entire life. So that was a defining moment, and not because it was a near-death experience, but because in having that near-death experience, I realized there was someone on the other side who didn't know me, didn't know anything about me, but was intent on killing me. And I think that, you know, really helped understand and frame the entire full context of this ongoing conflict. That there are people on one side who will wake up in the morning and are intent on killing people they don't even know, people who are not engaged in combat like that. So that for me, I think was very clearly a standout moment.
And I guess we'll stick with you because just want to make clear, obviously on this panel there's a combination of Israelis who were born in Israel and were drafted, and soldiers who were lone soldiers. So just quickly to ask the lone soldiers, what was it that inspired you to join the IDF? You obviously didn't have to. So what made you decide to join?
Oh, sure. What is a lone soldier?
Oh, good point. Thank you. A lone soldier is someone who is not from Israel and they decide they come from any other part of the world. They decide to join the Israeli army. Usually they don't have any family there. Sometimes they do, but hence that's why they're called.
They could be Israeli. If they're Israeli and their families left Israel and only the child goes back, they would still be considered a lone soldier if they don't have any.
They're alone
siblings. Yes.
in your soldier army, right?
So if the lone soldiers can just give us a quick reason why.
I think it's challenging for everyone. You have slightly different motivations and different expectations. We had family there, so it's not like we were totally alone, you know, aunts, uncles, grandparents. But I think the motivation, you know, is if you're living as a Jew who identifies as a Jew, who appreciates Jewish history and what Israel means to it, you understand that the fight that Jews are fighting, which is a fight that is particular to Israel, but is really a global fight, is all one and the same. There is no IDF soldier fighting for Jews and Jews elsewhere, you know, doing nothing. So I felt compelled, and particularly I would say in 2002, at the height of the Intifada, when you turned on your TV and you found out, you know, twice in a day, two buses blew up a cafe almost every day. The sense of, you know, the calling, being needed, being, you know, that was it for me.
Well, for me, it was looking up to my two older brothers that were in the army 10 years before me. So I always shaved my head, buzzed like them, and wanted to with my older brothers. But like I said before, I was in college in Hunter when the war in Gaza broke out. The war that and there's a really strong anti-Israel presence in that college, and the mix of that and hearing those stories every day. I couldn't, you know, studies you can put on hold, but I couldn't sit here comfortably while that was going on.
So for me, there was a bunch of factors besides for being Zionistic, wanting to help the country. I happen to have a lot of family in Israel, so before going into the army, I thought lone soldier doesn't matter to me because I have a lot of family and a lot of extended family. But I found out the hard way that it does matter when your personal family isn't there. It's a lot different. And
what was the motivation?
motivation.
Or you're just pro-Israel Zionist.
Yeah, that was pretty much the motivation.
So I guess now we'll start also with the questions that students had submitted at our tabling. And one of them was about how do you deal with children becoming violent towards you? It's a pretty broad question, but I think it's really relevant because I don't know if you all know, but recently in the news, there was a young Palestinian teenager, Ahmed Tamimi, and she had slapped multiple times an Israeli soldier, and on the spot they did nothing, but she was later arrested. So the question, I guess, has two parts. You can ask, in general, how did you or do you deal with children who are violent, and also what would you have done in this situation if you were that soldier being slapped by Ahmed Tamimi. So anyone can go ahead. Whoever wants to answer that first. It's not an easy, but go for it.
I would tell you that, first of all, there are rules of engagement with everyone, from children to unarmed people. There are very simple ideas that if somebody is attacking you in any way, they're violent towards you, you are to neutralize them with the appropriate force. So that's the first step. Number two, the idea that, you know, the IDF enjoys engaging or having to arrest an 8-year-old for throwing rocks, which could kill people and have killed people, is absurd, obviously. It's an absurd paradigm. Further, the idea that you would see images of a child hitting a soldier only emerges from Israel. Why? Because you have it nowhere else. Nowhere else in the world would a soldier allow a child to hit them. So you wouldn't see images from Russia or all over Europe or Southeast Asia of a child hitting a soldier, but you see it in Israel. There is that phenomenon, and that's because we've been warned now. Every move is, under hyper scrutiny. So it goes into, and that's what happened with Tamimi. At that point, you feel like, it's a trap. All the cameras are there. What do? So you kind of switch off. The right thing would have been to accept no slapping, nothing. You're not your job is to protect and defend, not to take the hits. We don't believe in turning the other cheek. Turning the other cheek leads to more people getting slapped, not just you getting slapped over and over. So I think that is very simply, on top of that, if you arrest a child, normally you have to take an adult with them. So you see in many videos, they arrest a child, they bring a parent with them. And lastly, I would say, if you really want to deal with them, you shouldn't just hold children in detention. You should hold their parents accountable, because that's child neglection and endangerment. And in every other country, that's obviously against the law and crime.
She wasn't a child. She's a kid.
Yeah.
It's
Well, since disputed, some write that she's 17, 18, so
That kid specifically.
she's been in the business for a long time.
I want to also say that, following up to what you said, the frustrating part, besides that it's only happening in Israel, where an actual teenager, no matter where he's from, slapping a soldier in the army, and how the media tells it to the outside world what happened. And I just heard that there is a petition to release her, calling to release her from Tamimi from being arrested. And some very famous Hollywood actor just signed a petition calling to release her from the Israeli policy or whatever prison, to release her because of the Palestinian situation. Now, they don't talk about the real scenario that happened, because if they would have talked about the real scenario that happened, why she got arrested from the first place, about she slapped an Israeli soldier, and she's also, her and her family are very very violent in their ideology. Yes, so they don't talk about that. They just say she's a juvenile and she's in prison by the Israelis. So what the media shows is very one-sided, because if that case would have happened to an American soldier, I bet non-petition would have started in the first place, because that's the obvious thing to do. You don't slap a soldier, no matter where you are and what's your citizenship. No one would even question about this. But the media is very one-sided, that this is what's so frustrating about it. And
so just as a follow-up then, since you mentioned that, do you think that these distortions and the propaganda, do you think it has a real impact on the soldiers on the ground? Like, does it have like this cyclical effect where...
Yeah, very known journalist I really like, James Skady. He wrote about this incident, and he said this soldier didn't do nothing, and even if you look at the video, the actual footage, he looked really kind of like shocked and puzzled at the same time, and really don't know how to respond to this. Now, he didn't know how to respond to this because you're in a situation, there's so much outside pressure of the media and everyone, and they're just hunting with their phones just to get footage where Israeli soldiers get violent, just to make it really propaganda about it, and twist it to their side. So he said, yes, Israeli soldiers do get very puzzled, and sometimes they don't really know what to do with that incident because they would know, and that's not the first incident that happens, but they would know actually that they can even get arrested or even punished without reacting to those kind of problematic, subtle situations. So,
did anyone on this panel ever feel like they might be arrested for doing something, or feel like you had to be extra cautious in certain situations?
So I was in, after the war, they put us in the southern part of Hebron, in the mountains there, and there's this disputed piece of land there that every Saturday at around 10 o'clock, the reading the Torah at that time, whoever's religious, and it's a religious settlement, and they come in from the neighboring towns, and they protest this greenhouse, this greenhouse that they built by the Green Line, and we had briefings before that you shouldn't hit them, you shouldn't touch them, you have to hit you, and different ways to deal with that. So I wasn't personally hit by a kid, but they have ran at me, they have tried to intimidate us, which is weird because we're soldiers. So they're intimidating us, we're intimidating them. It kind of gets lost in somewhere in between. And then also on top of that, you have the people that live in the settlement who want to protect their home. So they're coming down also. So now you have an added thing where you have Israelis coming down and fighting with them because they don't have anything to care about. They don't have any law, they don't have any, you know, if they hit an Arab, they'll hit an Arab. And they have. I've seen this before.
You're talking about the Israeli settlers?
Yeah, because they're strong like always.
So on that point, I will say that sometimes we have kids from the settlements being very aggressive, and we treat them same treatment. As a soldier, we can't touch them, but we call the army police, and they come and they take them away. You know, it's not that we are just, you know, the army there is to hurt my feelings. No, we are there to keep quiet. So if the settlements kids are coming down and throwing rocks, they will get the same treatment. And when I was a soldier, of course, the first point is to protect Israel, to protect your home. But at the same time, if there's an Israeli guy or a Jewish guy doing the same thing, he will be treated the same way. And we took many kids away and to jail, and they get the same treatment. With the Tamimi, I just want to say that I'm very happy I wasn't there because I don't know how I would act. It's a very, very, very hard situation. Think about how many forces you have coming from everywhere, and it's degrading as a person. You know, a person comes to you and slaps you, and you want to do something, but you can't. You know, it's like I feel like it's in a way it's very degrading and think about it. It was almost like a play. You know, there was a camera. It was all an act, just to invoke something. Because if something will happen, that was a different story. We would talk about different story right now, right?
So this,
in a way, it shows just how much restraint Israeli soldiers have. You see cops over the world that have less restraint. You know, they see someone with their hands up, and kids still shoot even if they're begging for their lives. And then you have a girl who's obviously no threat, and you don't see, but she's like lifting her hand up. And if that was the case with a police officer here, you know, what would the reaction be? We'd be seeing a very different story right now.
so that seems pretty clear cut, that scenario, honestly, that she was trying to evoke a response. But has there been a moment for any of you where you felt like your moral beliefs were challenged? And this is actually a question someone submitted. Have you ever had an experience where you had to do something that possibly went against your moral beliefs?
I think the idea of certainly at different points there is this confrontation between the army and settlers, either evacuating illegal settlements or fighting off, you know, some violent settlers. I wouldn't think as if settlers as a whole are, you know, violent. There are many peace-loving, liberal, Zionist lefties that are settlers. But there is that dilemma, I think, that particularly as a Jew facing off with another Jew, it goes back to the early days of the state when you had, pagan and, one side, the Israel against the Haganah and the Yehud, etc. And that was, I think, a huge dilemma. But like I said, at the end of the day, I think every Israeli soldier knows and that's to defend the law, the rule of law, and law and order, regardless of who's doing the disorder.
Anyone else want to answer that question? It's kind of a tough one, but the question was, have you ever faced wolves or
I did. We were doing an arrest in a village called Spabte.
is that in the West Bank?
In the West Bank, yeah. And we were arresting this guy who we learned about what exactly he did before, the reasons why we were arresting him. We went in.
In short. To make a short story long.
Basically, I can't really give details about it, but we go there and you have to separate the men from the women, and you have to ask the man of the household to organize everyone so you can find the person that you're arresting and have it very organized. Because otherwise, there can be a lot of chaos. And there were Arabs lived with a lot of family together, and they had a lot of kids, as you can imagine. And there were 3 or 4 kids just looking at us with terrorized faces. They've heard so much about IDF soldiers. They call us Quwat al-Ihtilal, like the Kochot al-Kibush, yeah, exactly. And they're just told these stories, demonizing us from a young age. And you go in there with all your gear, and their mother is screaming in Arabic, and it's a lot of chaos. And you see the look on their faces, and they're crying, and you don't know what to do. But it's a difficult situation. But those are the families that are just instilling this hate into their kids, and I think that's a big. It's one of the main problems moving forward. Is that we'll always have that if the parents just keep passing down to their kids, and them looking at us like that. The only thing that we could do was, tell them in Arabic, broken Arabic, it's gonna be all right. Don't worry, we're taking your brother, your uncle, because he did some bad stuff, but everything's gonna be okay.
Just a little follow-up on that. The former provost here at the city, who was a provost until a few years ago, his name is Zev Dagan. He's Israeli, and he was telling me a story. He came back to teach a course this semester, and he hadn't been there for a while. And he was telling me a story. He was a soldier during the Milchemet HaTashah in Sinai, and he said when they would travel back through Gaza, back to Israel for weekends, time off, they would stop in Gaza to eat in a restaurant, to have some hummus and some falafel. And he said the people there were so scared of them that they refused to take money from them in the restaurants, and they had to just leave the money on the table. Times have changed. He said the adults, the children, they were all petrified of them because they were expecting the Israelis to just kill them all. Times have changed, but that was the mentality of the Palestinians then when they were newly captured and those territories were newly taken over. They sort of expected the kind of treatment that they get that happens in Iraq when one group takes over the other.
So just to add on to that point, then, have you felt or do you currently feel that the people that you're dealing with don't fear you, or do you feel like
there shouldn't be a fear? There shouldn't be a fear, and if they're good citizens or not citizens, residents, they have nothing to fear. They know that. If they're doing something wrong or something to hide, then some of them have that fear, or some of them don't have that fear. They have what they call their courage. Calling them what do they call
freedom fighter.
Freedom fighter.
Martyr.
But since you mentioned, Rafi, before, the hatred that gets passed on, obviously, I'm sure a lot of us at City College, we notice another group on campus that, will promote hatred and distortions and lies. And I I want to read a question that we did get from a student. And I think it's an important one to ask because this is an accusation that's often lodged at us, at SSI members, at anyone who's pro-Israel. And the question is, how do you commit genocide on another group of people, knowing that your people were hurt by genocide?
An actual question we got, I watched it.
And it's a question that it's something that's been asked of us. So
this is a very important question because there's people in school sitting in your class that when they hear Israel, that's coming in their heads, you know? She didn't thought about it for like a week and came with a question. We asked her to write a question, she wrote. So it's like yes. Right. So think about it like this. You have people in classes that really don't understand what's going on. So, I mean, that's, if you take something from here, maybe that question.
I really think that this question getting asked just proves that it's a very strong. There's a very strong voice anti-Israel that's going on into the world in the world in general, and it's a voice saying to the uninformed people, getting them misinformed, so they would eventually speak up and say Israel doesn't have the right to exist, as much as a country that does genocide doesn't have the right to exist, or a country that is having apartheid doesn't have the right to exist, just what happened in South Africa. So making these kind of accusations, it's a libel, right? It's false, obviously, and it's a great tech strategy to draw people who are uninformed, who are clueless about Israel and about what's going on, making them being anti-Israel. So it's taking uninformed people, misinformed, people who are misinformed and brainwashing them, and not even just brainwashing them, just throwing terms in the air and making people believe something without even really knowing anything about it. So she came out with this question, and I wouldn't be surprised if someone would come up with this question: how come Israel is having apartheid? Where what apart? I mean,
Do you know what that word means? Like,
do you even
you know what's going on there?
No, I just want to add, I think it's an important thing that they come and ask the question, but then they don't come to hear a response. There's the accusation, but no dialogue, as Bill was saying in the beginning.
Israel, do you want to say?
Yeah, sure. I really think it's actually a very easy thing to dismantle and answer. There are two real problems with it. Number one, it's a false premise and a false equivalency. To say that, you had genocide committed to you and now you're committing a genocide would imply that they're equivalent, they're the same, but obviously they're not all the same. It also implies that we have distorted ideas of the definition of genocide. What is it? Is it based on the amount of people that are killed? Is it based on it being systematic? How do you apply that to the situation? And of course, it's misapplied entirely. And as you said, we know why. We know where that comes from. It comes specifically to obscure and create smoke screens. You created genocide. Anything that you could say that might be legitimate, I'm just going to throw it back at you. And it's ironic, and this genocide is specifically sick and twisted because they go from denying the Holocaust happened to saying Hitler should have finished the job, to saying you're the Nazis and we're the victims. So that's a level of twistedness that's all contained and wrapped up in that nice little neat question that really masks a really despicable agenda.
Did anyone else want to answer my question, or
Could you just tell us why it's not how that accusation is so false? Just explain the false pretense.
If you really want to get into genocide, right, to say that Israel commits genocide.
For the people who don't know what's going on there. Yeah. I know, you know what's going on there.
Sure. So, if you look all around the world, there is genocide happening. Generally, genocide implies those two things. It's a certain scale of murder, and it's a focus and intention of eradicating a certain group of people. That is genocide. That Israel encounters people in all kinds of situations, that it makes mistakes and could even kill innocent people at times, particularly when they're used as human shields. That cannot be, by any standard or definition, be considered genocide. Those could be mistakes, they could even be crimes, but it is not genocide. So when we talk about these terms, particularly in places, like academia, where we should be precise with these things, it's ironically where we're the least precise. And again, for people who are involved and active, you kind of just, to read between the lines, but most people, and this is part of what I aim to do in my own research and work, is that there is an objective middle that are generally ignorant and don't know better. And if they hear things that go unchallenged, you know, the IDF soldiers are baby killers. You know, they put out these images that are really from Syria, but they say, it's, you know, if no one's going to counter that, then people are going to start buying into it. So it's layers and layers of distortions, misapplied terminology. We're colonialist oppressors. My favorite is that Zionists coming in the early 19th century. Forget about late 19th century when Zionism as a movement had already been formed. If you read Edward Said and you read Rashid Khalidi, they were colonialists already. Really? Jews coming into Palestine were colonialists in 1800. But Arabs coming from Saudi Arabia and all over the Levant and Arabia, well, they were just native, they belonged there. So there are these levels of distortions, of basic terminology that have historical significance that get twisted so that we end up in this stage where you can throw out, yeah, you have genocide, and you have entire groups of people that ascribe to that. So obviously the real genocide in Syria gets overlooked. These same, you know, activists and humanitarians, they don't keep a word about it, or if they do, not with the same virulence and, you know, incessant upkeep that they do against Israel.
So I will try to, Israel talk about a lot of like, about the macro, like the big, and I will try to go into like a bit of the micro, the daily thing that soldiers like us do, okay? So, if you think about genocides and you think about that, you think about what the Tutsi and the Congo are doing in Africa, if you know what they're doing, which is insane. The Armenian, which is 1.8 million people were killed by the Turkish. But then you go to Israel, okay? And then you go to like one of the shows that we made. And we talked about how we open fire, right? So for example, if you have a big disturbance,
demonstration, protest.
Okay, so basically, there's a rule of fire. There's way and times you can fire, and there's time you can't. For example, like one of the things that when we were in Nablus, which is it's a very big city, and there's hundreds of thousands of people there. They told us that a Molotov, for example, a Molotov is basically an alcoholic bottle with oil, and they flame it and they throw it on you. So and it can cause like a lot of fire, right? So right. So basically, when a person holds it, you cannot shoot it. Only when he throws it away. But the second he releases it, you cannot shoot it because you have no indication who did it. Even if you saw him did it, you know? So you have like a millisecond of shooting or not shooting. And most of us doesn't shoot because you know it will be wrong in the eyes of the public. And we will go back to our Tamini style stuff. And that's the differences between genocide and not genocide. Our soldiers will respect every rule of fire there is. And if not, they will go to jail, like what happened with that soldier that decided, Elo Azariah, which decided to shoot a Palestinian guy.
Neutralized Americans.
Right, neutralized, and he went to jail. So, if you think about this kind of state of mind that the soldier is doing, there's no way there's a genocide. And I don't think people would talk about Israel, or they have this panel if you have a genocide, you know? I think we'll try to hide it somewhere, you know? There's no way we'll have a dialogue about it, you know? Like Hitler didn't have a dialogue. The Turkish didn't have a dialogue, you know? That in Africa there's no dialogue. In Darfur, what happened? No one's trying to do something, you know?
So since we have about 10 minutes left, yeah, we're going to open up questions for anyone. Ariel, just like getting back on this question, how would you respond to similar claims of like ethnic cleansing? Because like genocide, if you haven't been to Israel, if you haven't been to Israel, it's obvious that's not the case. But then you have claims of ethnic cleansing, which I read about in some of my political science classes, where you're not killing everybody, you're not killing the Palestinians there, but rather pushing them out. And then you have, you know, settlements now where people can still make these claims. How would you respond to that?
Thank you for asking this. So I would say to people that actually asking this, just inform them about really facts that's going on. Palestinians are Arabs, correct? Great. In the Israel territory, not the Palestinian Authority in the West Bank, because they're not under Israeli government. They're like under Israeli Palestinian authority. We're talking about the actual Israel outside the West Bank, right? There are 20% of the population of Israel are Arabs, meaning almost 1 million out of between 8 to 9 million people living in Israel are Arabs. 1 million. These 1 million people that people are accusing Israel for supporting ethnical cleansing or whatever it is, right? These 1 million Arabs are represented in the Israeli parliament. They have a couple of parties, Arab parties. These 1 million Arabs are having the same rights as I have, the same rights as an Israeli,
and more rights than they would have living in any other country.
And more rights than they would probably have in any Arab country in the world right now, or whatever country that is around the Middle East. They have the right to vote. They have the right to use the same public restrooms as I use. They can go to shopping where in the same places I shop. And I live in Gilo in Jerusalem, whoever knows and who doesn't. I have near me 2 Arab villages, very big ones. And they are having businesses with Jewish people. They're having with Israelis, with Jewish, right? And there is no ethnical cleansing trying to do, because if there was, you wouldn't see on your road signs in all 3 languages. There's like actually road signs in Arabic.
But sorry, just to clear up, I think the claims that they make is not that right now there's ethnic cleansing, but that in the past there wasn't ethnic cleansing. And you have claims that places like Deir Yassin were ethnically cleansed. So how would we answer that? Where in places where they might have actually been kicked out, because that's happened before. So.
I think the first thing with these questions is that you tend to immediately just want to respond and you don't even know where to begin. You say, oh, ethnic cleansing, it's very broad. I think the first thing you have to do is you have to ask the person who's asking, be specific. What are you talking about? Which case? What ethnic cleansing? And let them apply. Let them say, oh, that kid that was killed last week, and what, that's ethnic cleansing? You know what ethnic cleansing is? Have you seen ethnic cleansing? We've seen it. Jews of Islamic lands have seen ethnic cleansing. We were driven out at the same time that there was somewhat of a population transfer. What about the fact that many of the Arab leaders were the ones telling, most of the Arabs that left were told by their leaders, because they were so confident that the Arab armies would come in, send the Jews into the ocean, into the sea, and they'll go right back. So what ethnic cleansing? And again, how do you define ethnic cleansing? So when you look at the individual cases, the thing that would really most define a program of ethnic cleansing is a program, is a system. Someone like, if you see, compared to the genocide, the final solution was a plan. At the Wannsee conference, they had a list of every single country where they had Jews, the exact number that they would aim to exterminate. That is ethnic cleansing.
No,
the skirmishes, the entanglement. I'm sorry?
That was genocide, not ethnic cleansing.
Right,
She's
no.
distinguishing between ethnic cleansing and genocide.
Right, but it could be both. You could have genocide as the scale of murder and ethnic cleansing as the intention within your country. The idea was to ethnically remove the Jews who were vermin in Germany. So that is a form of ethnic cleansing. And you could have ethnic cleansing that's on a very small scale in a little village and it wouldn't be considered genocide. And you could have genocide that kills people indiscriminately and wouldn't necessarily be considered. But in the case of the Jews, it was in fact both. So when you get to ethnic cleansing, you say Israel, ethnic cleansing, I ask where?
I'd love to hear from each of you on this, if you're willing to answer or able. Do you believe do you think it's possible that we'll ever have a world without war?
Just for the sake of time, just to keep the answers really, really brief.
I think it's possible. Will we get there? We just have to keep trying.
I mean, that's what I went to the army for. Not to have war. You join to stop it, Like we join not to fight something. The IDF called the Israel Defense Force. We're trying to defend. We're not trying to expand. We don't try to go anywhere. I mean, I really appreciate these guys because they came from the U.S. But I just wanted to save my little sister. I just wanted to drive the bus and say like, oh, I can drive the bus and nothing will happen to me. So I hope.
I think there's a real difference between both sides. Golda Meir, the first Prime Minister, she was What did it say?
First female.
She said the second that we put our arms, the second that the Arabs put their arms down, there'll be peace. The second that we put our arms down, we'll all be dead. So you see the two sides. All the Israelis, they just want to, smoke a joint with their friends or have a beer with their girlfriend on the beach. No Israeli. So we see a real discrepancy between the two sides. That one wants peace and hopes for peace. Every Israeli mother and father, they'll just say, I wish for my kids that there won't be I moved to Israel now. I can't imagine sending my kids to do what I did. I don't want that. That's no Israeli parent wants that. But unfortunately, the other side, so all we can do is hope.
Do we have any more questions from the audience? Yeah.
So today is International Women's Day, and I have a question just for Michal, if you don't mind.
And she's the higher rank here. She's the higher rank.
So this is a very general question, but I was wondering if you could just touch a little bit upon your experience as a woman in the Army.
Wow. So yeah, I'm glad you asked this because it's great also answers for all the misinformed people that think that Israel is non-democratic, is very racist, right, or discriminating. I think as someone who served the military and many other friends of mine, girlfriends that actually served the military, we were treated very much equally. Besides, actually, unless you choose to be a combat soldier, then you have your own dude, like your own unit, yeah, which are only girls. But I think that as a fitness instructor and as an officer, I was physically trained a lot, and I was tested not only my physical stamina but also my mental stamina. And I think that we were trained to use weapons just as guys. We were trained to do many things. So maybe our scores eventually didn't match up to the guys' physical abilities, but we are definitely trained and not really discriminated by some prejudice or any treatment of lower status just because we are women and we're in the military and we are not as strong as men. And more than that, I would say, especially coming here and making this move from Israel to here, and in the United States, it's a really big conversation, right, about women's rights. Back home, I think because every 18-year-old girl goes to the military, and I think culturally, the way we perceive women's rights, something which for us sometimes is even taken as obvious, because we go to the same path as in the military, right, just as men do as for service time, not exactly service times. Even now it's even getting changed, but I think here it's definitely something which is more talked about, and back home I really feel that we really don't even have even much discussions about it, because culturally we accept that this equality is going on there.
Well, that is a great way to end off. Unfortunately, we're out of time, and there's a class that's waiting to come. I just want to thank our panel.